A single gunshot shattered the quiet desert morning. Clara froze beside the broken wagon, her hands trembling, breath sharp in her chest. Smoke drifted from the barrel of her husband's rifle, but he wasn't holding it anymore. He lay face down in the dust, blood spreading across the sand like a dark flower. The horse had bolted, the supplies were gone, and on the far ridge, silhouettes on horseback grew larger, moving fast. The world felt suddenly endless, merciless. Clara's voice cracked through the silence. "No, please." But there was no one left to hear her. The riders were coming. The desert stretched out like an ocean of burning sand, empty and merciless. Clara knelt beside her husband's body, fingers digging into his shirt as if she could anchor him to the earth. But his skin was cooling fast. His breath was gone. The gunshot rang in her skull, louder than the vast silence that followed. She tasted metal in her mouth, the sour fear pooling thick on her tongue. Her heartbeat thudded like hooves, and for a moment she wondered if it was only in her mind until she heard them for real. Riders, fast, getting closer. No, not again. She forced herself to stand, legs shaking beneath the weight of shock. She glanced toward the wagon's splintered wood, torn canvas, wheels cracked. Nothing left useful, nothing that could save her. She could run, but where? The desert would swallow her before the sun reached its peak. A shout echoed across the flats. "There she is!" Clara spun. 3 riders, dark hats, long coats, rifles slung across their saddles. She recognized the leader's scar even from a distance. The man had smiled when he shot her husband. Bile rose in her throat. They were toying with her, hunting her like prey they knew couldn't escape. She stumbled backward, step after step, until her heel struck a stone. She nearly fell, catching herself with a gasp. Then something caught her eye. At the top of a rocky ridge to the west, a lone figure sat astride a tall horse. He was still, watching, half shadowed by the morning sun. She couldn't see his face, but the way he held himself calm, poised, sent a shiver through her. "Who?" she whispered. The outlaws slowed, noticing him as well. Their formation tightened. The leader raised binoculars, and Clara saw tension ripple through his body. "Turn back," he barked to his men. "We'll deal with it later." Clara blinked. The outlaws turned away from her just like that. The stranger remained motionless. Clara's mind raced. Why had they retreated? Did they fear him? Or were they planning something worse? The silence pressed in again, suffocating. Her husband lay at her feet. The desert was endless. And now, somewhere between salvation and danger, a stranger watched her. She felt exposed, small, and yet not entirely alone. Her breath hitched. She stepped toward him, hesitant, as dust devils twisted between them. For the first time since the gunshot, Clara wondered if she might still survive. Clara wiped her trembling hands on her skirt, smearing dust into the fabric. She took a final glance at her husband. A raw ache ripped through her chest, but the approaching heat forced her to move. If she stayed, grief would kill her before any outlaw did. Her boots sank into loose sand as she made her way toward the ridge. Every step felt wrong, leaving him there, exposed and alone. But she couldn't bury him with the outlaws nearby. She couldn't even say goodbye. The ridge loomed, jagged like broken teeth biting into the sky. The stranger hadn't moved, but now she could see more details. Dusty duster coat, white hat pulled low, revolver holstered at his hip, a rifle in a saddle scabbard. He was armed enough to take on an entire gang, or kill an unarmed widow. Clara swallowed hard. Her footsteps slowed as she approached the base of the ridge. The desert wind hissed through the rocks. The stranger's horse shifted its weight, snorting softly. Then he spoke, his voice carried easily on the dry air, steady, controlled. "You shouldn't be alive." Clara froze. "What? What do you mean?" He didn't answer immediately. His hand rested lightly on the rifle, not threatening, but not relaxed either. "They don't leave witnesses." A chill crawled up Clara's spine. "You saw what happened." "I saw enough." Clara searched his face for emotion, but the shadow of his hat concealed his eyes. She felt exposed under his silent judgment, as if he could see through her. The fear, the rage simmering beneath, the guilt that she hadn't stopped her husband from drawing his weapon too late. Her voice quivered. "I need help, please." The stranger shifted in the saddle, posture tightening. "I'm not looking for trouble." She stepped closer despite her fear. "I already have trouble. And if you leave, they'll come back." A cloud of dust rose in the distance, small at first, barely visible. Clara stared, heartbeat quickening. The outlaws hadn't retreated after all. They had circled around the ridge. The stranger turned his head slowly, jaw tightening. "That's a scouting trail," he muttered. "They're flanking." Panic surged through Clara. "Will you help me?" The stranger dismounted in a swift, practiced motion. He reached behind the saddle and pulled out a second rifle, smaller, worn but functional. He tossed it at her feet. Dust puffed up around it. Can you shoot? Clara stared at the weapon, the weight of the moment pressing like a blade against her throat. She didn't answer. She couldn't. The dust cloud grew larger, closer. The stranger stepped back, eyes fixed on her, waiting for her choice. She realized the outlaws would be upon them in minutes, and whether she picked up that rifle or not could decide whether she lived or died beside her husband. Clara's hands hovered above the rifle. Her fingers twitched, drawn toward it, terrified of touching it. She could feel the heat radiating from the barrel, where the sun had beat down on the metal. The stranger crouched beside a boulder, eyes fixed on the horizon. 5 riders, maybe 6. Clara struggled to breathe. They're coming to kill us. No, the stranger replied calmly. They're coming to finish what they started. Clara flinched at the cold certainty in his tone. For him, death was familiar routine. The dust cloud rose thicker, horses emerging from the haze. Clara recognized the leader's scar again, jagged across his cheek like lightning frozen in flesh. His grin widened as he spotted her. The stranger grabbed her wrist and forced her behind cover. You want to live, you listen to me. Clara's voice shook. I can't shoot. You can. You just haven't yet. Gunfire cracked across the desert. Bullets ricocheted off rock, spraying stone fragments around them. Clara ducked instinctively, heart slamming against her ribs. The stranger returned fire with calculated precision. One outlaw toppled from his saddle. Another swerved, hoarse screaming. Clara gasped. The stranger hadn't hesitated, not even for a breath. The leader of the gang yelled, fury twisting his voice. She's mine. I'll make her scream before she dies. Clara's blood turned to ice. The stranger's jaw clenched. He wants you alive. That's worse. Clara felt bow rise. Why? Why us? He didn't look at her. Men like him don't need reasons. They need witnesses to fear them. A bullet slammed into the stone beside Clara's head. She shrieked, instinctively grabbing the rifle. Her hands trembled, but her grip tightened. The stranger glanced back at her, eyes shadowed but piercing. Good. Aim low, horse or rider, doesn't matter. Just stop them. Clara braced herself, pressed the stock to her shoulder the way her father once showed her long ago. That memory stung childhood afternoons. Target practice with a rusted shotgun, laughter. That innocence was gone now. More gunshots exploded. The smell of gunpowder and sweat burned her throat. She steadied her breath, finger hovering over the trigger. But her vision blurred. Tears, fear, guilt. She couldn't kill someone, could she? Her husband's body flashed in her mind. Blood staining sand, lifeless eyes. The leader raised his rifle, aiming directly at her. The stranger yelled, voice raw. Clara, shoot. Her finger trembled on the trigger. Her heartbeat thundered. Her world narrowed to that single irreversible moment. Clara squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked hard, sending a shock through her shoulder. The shot rang out across the desert. For a heartbeat, she didn't know if she'd hit anything. Then the leader's horse screamed, collapsing mid-stride. He tumbled to the ground, rolling violently before coming to a stop in a cloud of sand. He didn't get up. Clara's breath caught. Her arms shook violently. She stared at her hands, horrified at what she'd done. The stranger didn't pause. He fired again, striking another rider. The remaining outlaws hesitated, eyes darting between Clara and their fallen leader. Fear cracked through Clara, sharp and electric. The man didn't move, but a slow groan escaped him. He was alive. The stranger cursed under his breath. He'll shoot again. Clara lowered the rifle, unable to look away from the man she'd shot. The world spun. The heat pressed in. A harsh, broken laugh came from the wounded leader. Didn't think. You had it in you. Clara flinched. The stranger stepped toward him, gun raised. But before he could fire, another bullet tore past, grazing Clara's ear. Pain ignited across her skin. She dropped behind cover, hand flying to her cheek. Warm blood trickled between her fingers. More riders were cresting a distant hill, reinforcements. The stranger's expression shifted, not panic, but calculation. They've called their posse. Clara's voice shook. We can't fight them all. No, he agreed. We can't. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward his horse. Get up. I'm my husband. You wanna die next to him. His voice was harsh, cutting through her grief. Clara's chest tightened. Tears blurred her vision. Leaving her husband felt like betrayal, but staying meant death. The stranger hoisted her onto the horse with surprising strength. Gunfire cracked behind them. Sand sprayed. He mounted behind her, one arm gripping the reins, the other steadying her trembling body. Hold on. The horse surged forward. Clara clung to the saddle horn, teeth clenched as wind whipped past. The ground blurred beneath pounding hooves. Behind them, the outlaw leader screamed orders, desperate fury filling the desert. Clara looked back once, long enough to see riders mounting, guns raised, beginning pursuit. Her voice was hoarse. Who are you? The stranger's jaw tightened. Someone they fear. Clara stared ahead, throat tight. What do they call you? He hesitated. Then, low and final. Rays? The name carried weight, like a warning carved into stone. Ahead, the horizon shimmered with heat. Behind them, death galloped closer. The chase had begun. The desert wind roared in Clara's ears as the horse thundered across cracked earth. Every stride jolted her bones. Hot air tore at her throat, stealing breath the way grief stole reason. Rays kept the reins tight, gaze fixed ahead, body rigid with tension. Clara could feel that he was calculating distances, possibilities, death. Gunshots cracked behind them. A bullet whistled past her shoulder. Clara ducked instinctively, pressing back against Rays. He didn't flinch. Keep your head down. I can't breathe, she gasped. You breathe when we stop. If we stop, the words hit her like a blow. She knew he wasn't being cruel, just honest. The canyon walls rose ahead, jagged and steep. A narrow pass cut between them. Rays steered toward it without hesitation. Clara looked back. The riders were gaining, their shouts echoing across the plain. Dust clouds boiled around them like storm clouds. My husband, Clara choked out. Ray's voice hardened. He's gone. If you don't focus, you'll join him. Clara's throat burned. I left him there alone. You didn't leave him. They took him. Ray's tone was flat. But beneath it Clara sensed something else, something personal. She swallowed tears. Why are they after me? They could have killed me. Rays hesitated. They don't want you dead yet. Clara's stomach twisted. Why? Rays didn't answer immediately. He stared ahead at the canyon, jaw clenched, eyes narrowing as he read the land. Finally, he whispered, because you saw their faces, and because their leader enjoys breaking those who survive. Clara felt sick. The canyon walls closed around them, shadows deepening. Sound shifted, their hooves echoed off stone. The wind died, and gunshots became distant thunder behind them. Rays slowed the horse, knowing speed would be their enemy in the tight pass. We hold them here, he said, sliding off the saddle and drawing his rifle. Clara's eyes widened. No, we have to keep riding. Trails narrow. One wrong move and the horse breaks its leg. We die slower. Clara dismounted clumsily, legs weak. Rays handed her spare bullets. You're shaking, he said, not unkindly. I'm terrified, she whispered. Good. Fear keeps you alive, but only if you use it. The echoing hoofbeats grew louder again. Clara raised the rifle, breath trembling. Rays stared down the canyon mouth, voice calm but edged like steel. This is where we make our stand. The riders appeared, silhouettes emerging from the harsh desert glare. Clara's finger pressed to the trigger. Her fear coiled tight, ready to snap. The canyon walls loomed like sentinels, jagged and unyielding. Clara crouched behind a boulder, rifle trembling in her hands. Sweat burned her eyes. Dust filled her mouth. Rays was beside her, calm, controlled. Every muscle coiled, ready. The remaining outlaws crested the canyon entrance. Rifles raised, faces twisted with greed and malice. Clara's stomach churned. This was it, the moment of no return. She could see the scarred leader at the front, eyes scanning, lips curling in recognition and fury. Take the shot when I say, Rays murmured. Her finger hovered over the trigger. The echoes of the past days, her husband, the ambush, the desperate flight pressed down like a vice. She felt herself splitting, torn between terror and the raw, desperate need to survive. The leader raised his rifle. Clara's heart froze. Now, Rays barked. She squeezed the trigger. The shot cracked across the canyon, deafening. Dust and gravel flew as the leader fell back, shrieking. Clara's breath hitched. Her hands shook violently. Rays fired again, precise and merciless. Two riders toppled from their saddles. The remaining outlaws faltered, confusion flashing across their faces. Clara's fear twisted into adrenaline, sharpening her senses. She fired again, then another. Every shot felt like a strike against the panic threatening to consume her. The scarred leader staggered to his knees, looking up at her with a mixture of disbelief and rage. You, he rasped. Clara's chest tightened, the weight of every choice, the rifle, the fight, leaving her husband pressed down. And yet, for the first time, she felt a strange clarity. Rays grabbed her arm, steadying her. Finish it, or they come back. Clara's hands were steady now. She raised the rifle, aimed carefully. The leader's eyes widened, realizing his end was certain. Bang! He collapsed, motionless. Silence fell over the canyon, broken only by shallow breaths and the whispering wind. Clara sank to her knees, exhausted, shaking. Her ears still rang. Blood pounded in her temples. Rays lowered his weapon and stepped closer, offering a hand. She didn't take it immediately, afraid to trust anything, him, the rifle, even herself. Finally, she placed her hand in his. The strength in his grip was steadying, reassuring, yet it carried a promise. Survival had a cost, and she had paid it. The canyon stretched before them, empty now, quiet but forever changed. Clara looked down at her hands, trembling but alive, and realized something that felt almost impossible. She had survived. She had chosen life. Ray studied her face, expression softening for the first time. "You did what you had to do," he said quietly. She nodded, lips tight, feeling the weight of the day. The desert, the blood, and the loss. The sun began to dip behind the canyon walls, painting the sand in shades of fire and shadow. Clara lifted her gaze, meeting Ray's eyes. "Where do we go now?" He smiled faintly, a shadow of relief in the harsh light. "Forward. Always forward." The desert was vast, the world dangerous, but for the first time, Clara believed she could face it. Not as a victim, not as a widow, but as someone who had survived and who could endure whatever came next.